Let me introduce this next gentleman. Other than being like a brother to me, because I met him back in '82 as well, somewhere around that. Doug embodies leadership from a new paradigm of masculinity. Doug is creating awareness and awakening men and women to his vision of the new masculine heart, which embodies vitality, leadership, heart, and truth. His coaching clients are entitled, or enlightened, I should say, with his fresh, they're very entitled as well, most of them. They're entitled and then they meet Doug and they become enlightened. That's how it works when you dance on stage. With his fresh perspective offered by his leadership model, wholehearted leadership. Leadership from the inside out. Wholehearted leadership is anchored in courage, adventure, self-inquiry, and deliberate action. Doug lives in Inglewood, Colorado with his wife, Leslie, and their one-year-old puppy, Winnie. Ladies and gentlemen, Doug McGhee.
Turn up that music. Thank you. The power of love. $1 for anyone who knows where that song, what movie that song's associated with. Back to the Future. And that's kind of a mind thing in itself. Back to the future. What does that mean? I don't know. Maybe that's now. Back to the future. Today I'm going to share with you what I believe is the ultimate in leadership. And I call that wholehearted leadership. It's leadership from the inside out. Take a minute and place your hand over your heart. Take a breath and release. Wholehearted. Wholehearted leadership. Recently, I read an article about effective leadership and how effective leadership was 15% from the neck up. Things like skill, technique, concepts, and as much as 85% emotional intelligence. Your heart. Wholehearted leadership in my life means compassion, forgiveness, and love. Emotional intelligence is directly related to that. What are some qualities of emotional intelligence? Scream them out. Empathy, knowledge of self, self-awareness. What else? Love. So these are the areas that allow us to connect and lead and inspire people. So for me to share what wholehearted leadership is, first I'm going to share what it is not. It's not soft. It's not passive. It's not a concept. And certainly it's not for the faint of heart. Should I say anything? These are the qualities of living in your heart. Bring it on, life. Anyone feel that right now? I haven't felt that for a while, but I'm getting there, okay? The energy, the infinite world of possibility. This is a rock so let me just pause here. Moab, yeah. Life is perfect in many ways. The dynamic of this picture is that this is a balancing rock, and nature in its own way is perfect. This is from a trip that I took with a friend of mine, Eric Dunn, in the last month. This is the white rim in the Canyonlands in Moab. So I put this rock up here because it's a dynamic way of showing how perfect nature is and how perfect we are when we're living from our heart. This is impressions, okay? Consciousness has impressions that, consciousness forms impressions from life events. So for me to share impressions from my life, I'm going to share with you a personal story. It's a story of how I reinvented myself And by reinventing myself, I brought my father back to life. My life was perfect as a child. My parents were divorced when I was 4 years old. My mother single-handedly raised 4 children. I was the youngest of 4. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister. My mother was verbally abused by my father. My father's name is Jesse Thompson. He was incapable of providing emotional or financial support for us, could not maintain employment, and he abused alcohol. My life was perfect as a child. My life was challenging by not having a father in my life. And my life was perfect by not having a father in my life. It was challenging because I remember at 6 years old escaping from my father's house as my mother removed us from an unsafe environment. It was challenging because I remember when I was 17 years old being selected to wrestle a junior Olympian from Japan and being so excited to be there in this huge gymnasium with all these people and not having anyone there to support me. My life was challenging because at the end of the year in the banquets for the sporting events, all my friends would have their fathers there with them. And I was embarrassed that I didn't. My life was perfect because I grew up without a father. My mother was working her ass off to support our family. Guess what? I had a lot of independence, a lot of freedom. I became very independent and self-referential. My life was perfect because I didn't have a father. Our family is incredibly close. My brother Stephen's here, my other brother Sammy, and my sister Annie. So there's perfection in that as well. So these impressions create an impact on our consciousness. So an impression is any event or thing, person that comes into your consciousness and forms a filter. It begins to form our personalities, our identities, our filter of how we see and experience life. And then something happens. We move through life out of our childhood into our adult world. For me, what that meant was I became an overachiever. And what that was for me was always wanting more, never being satisfied with what I had. Being validated for things outside of me. My world went from that little child where I was in my heart experiencing this amazing amount of joy and unbridled self-expression and creativity to looking outside of me for joy and happiness, to wanting to be validated by you because you're a woman, or by you because you're my brother. Wanting to be acknowledged. And when I wasn't acknowledged, I came into disappointment and discouragement. That's trouble. Because you're never going to get enough of what you don't already have. So I had an opportunity to make a decision. And that decision was to go within me and start exploring my life. What happened were things like challenging relationship with my wife. I had an affair. I had blamed everyone in my life for my unhappiness. My business partners. Now keep in mind, everything in the outside world looked really good. I owned a business, I had a beautiful home, we could see the whole front range, a pool, a pond, but inside of me I was dying. I was not happy. So my personal universe began to shatter. I see this a lot in my coaching clients too. At some point in their life, what was outside of them is no longer feeding them or fulfilling them. So there's a crossroads. I could continue down the journey of, yeah, this all looks good, but I'm dead inside. or I can go inside myself and start to explore, which is the decision I made. So after a lot of books, seminars, something kept bubbling up, and that was, who is Jesse Thompson? Who is this man who you have not had a relationship with? And one Thanksgiving dinner, I sat next to my sister Annie, and we made an agreement in that moment that if she would find these numbers for these Jesse Thompsons in Western Kentucky and Cincinnati, that I would call that person. This is Thanksgiving. It took me till March of that year to get the courage and the willingness to make that phone call. This is my father, Jesse Thompson. Now, I didn't know who Jesse Thompson was on that March day. It was a week after my birthday. And this is how the call went. Dial, dial, dial. Answering machine comes on. Hello, this is Jesse Thompson. Please leave your name and number, and I'll return your call. If you're calling about Camel Limousine Service, please leave that information and we'll get back to you. I took the phone and I hung it up as quick as I could. I had no idea who that was, really. And if it was my father, I certainly wasn't going to leave that kind of message. So I talked myself out of that. I called a couple other people in that area, knowing in my heart that, yes, it was my father. I called the number back. This time someone answered. The call went like this. Hello? Is this Jesse Thompson? Yes, this is Jesse Thompson. Is this the Jesse Thompson who has 4 kids in Colorado? Now keep in mind, this is a week after my birthday. The next words out of his mouth were, yes, son, this is your father. Happy birthday. My heart exploded wide open in that moment. The conversation really wasn't important to me, but the connection and what my journey had brought me to in accepting this man for who he was, despite who I thought he was through my mother's filter. Compassion, forgiveness, and love. Those are the qualities and the intention for that phone call. Now, I share with you today that I didn't have any idea what that might create. I had a clear intention. I knew that it was my work that I was doing so that I could free myself from my own impressions that were made around not having a father growing up. But in the moment of that call, I was concerned about my mother. I was concerned about if we were opening a can of worms and this man that we didn't know. Is he still abusing alcohol? Does he have other kids? Is there going to be a financial liability for me? But I knew that it was true for me to reach out to him. So that's what I did. I established a relationship with that man for the last 15 years. Jesse Thompson is my father. Jesse Thompson was the man who loved me the most of any person in my life unconditionally. It's the only relationship that I've had in my life where there's an unconditional love. So here I was giving him a gift of his 4 children. And I got 10 times back from this man. I remember sitting summer nights out on his porch with him. His simplicity, his honesty, his directness, amazing qualities. And he's always asking me, how is your heart today, son? How is your heart today? Is it full? I ask that to my coaching clients. How is your heart today? It's different than, how you doing? Fine. There's an acronym by FINE, by the way, if you want to ask me after this. So in May of this year, May 14th, my father passed away. My sister Annie and my older brother Sammy, who are both here today, were by his side. My mother still struggles with her relationship with him. And that's okay. So my question for you, if I invite you to take your hand and place it back over your heart. Close your eyes this time and answer the following question. Who is your Jesse Thompson? Who have you been disconnected from, judgmental toward, cynical of, but deep in your heart, wanting to be connected to? Open your eyes. So I've shared this story many times. And the last time someone came up to me and said, Doug, you know, I don't have anyone like your father, but my Jesse Thompson is me. So I offer that to you. This is the time to reconnect with yourself and perhaps someone outside. Who is your Jesse Thompson? My challenge to you is within the next 24 hours to commit to that action and reconnect with that person. Wholehearted leadership is leadership from the inside out. I believe it's the ultimate in leadership. And the question I wanted to answer for you today is that possible in our culture? Can it be applicable in the mortgage business, which is what I'm still very involved in? Well, I can do it, you know, in the personal world, but go into a mortgage company and be this way, that's a risk, right? That's risky. That's right, it is risky. And that's what leadership is. But until we each take a stand for this and open up our hearts and explore a life of self-inquiry, we're hiding part of who we are. We're hiding part of who we are. The future of wholehearted leadership begins with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.